rural settlement. Next we'll be talking about the patterns of rural settlements. The patterns of rural settlement. So if we talk about the patterns of rural settlement, as we have seen, what is the meaning of the term pattern? Pattern refers to the geometrical arrangement. It is essentially the geometrical study of the geometrical arrangement of the rural settlements. We can also call it as the map view, bird's eye view. What type of shapes they make up. That is what we mean by the patterns of rural settlement. Although you can understand that every settlement is unique in itself, still we will be finding with respect to the houses, with respect to the roads, how they are present, we will be finding that there would be some common features found with respect to their shape, their geometrical arrangement, and that is what we are going to study here. So number of type of patterns can be there. So you can see all the rural settlements largely lack a well-defined internal organization on their plan. There can be considerable agreement on both internal structure and external outline. On the basis of this structural and geometrical outline, rural settlement patterns are identified. However, patterns in a typical sense deals only with which type? We have already talked about this. Compact and semi-compact settlements, as each dispersed settlements would have their own shape. So there can be a variety of patterns which can be found. The most common form of pattern is the rectangular pattern. It is, as we said, most common in India as well as in the world, conforms to the rectangular pattern. More commonly, they developed at the intersection of two transportation arteries. In India, such settlements are also prevalent, result of the prevalent land tenure and distribution system in the past, where farm estates were generally rectangular. Because of that, what will happen? The shape of the settlements would also become rectangular. So, if you talk about rectangular pattern, suppose this is the intersection of roads. Here we will be commonly finding that so this type of pattern is essentially what? It is a rectangular pattern. So these are also largely due to the past heritage, where villages tried to build houses such that their axis does not depart from the cardinal directions. They are most common in North Indian plains. Not only in North Indian plains, you can understand rectangular patterns are the most common forms of pattern. Now there are various variants of rectangular pattern. One common type of rectangular pattern is the grid pattern or the checkerboard pattern, where this develops where transport lanes intersect each other at right angle. Over a period of time, there can be development of subsidiary lanes to make the movement of people easy where there is high density of roads. So it is something like this. this is essentially what? This is a checkerboard. Checkerboard pattern. So here to make connections between the places, this type of subsidiary lanes over a period of time would be developing. So it is nothing but a rectangular pattern, just it takes a specific form which is grid type. Then there is a hollow rectangular. It is another variant of rectangular pattern in which there is a open space in the center of the settlement. This space is most frequently occupied by socio-religious institutions like temple, pond, can be even physical features like the forests. So such type of pattern is referred to as the hollow rectangular. So here there can be a temple, there can be a forest, and this type of arrangement would be found. So this is referred to as the hollow rectangular pattern. Then there can be herringbone pattern. So herringbone pattern is a situation where there is main transportation artery which is being intersected with subsidiary arteries at right angle. And here the main artery has greater importance, the main road. So for example, herringbone pattern would look something like this. There is this type of main road, and there are these subsidiary lanes. So here the This is the herringbone pattern. So this is some of the variants of the rectangular pattern which can be found. Then you can understand that another common type of pattern would be linear pattern. So it is another important pattern found in India. Here villages are arranged in more or less straight line along various natural and socio-economic features like natural levees, river banks, coastlines, hill ridges, railway tracks, roads, etc. So if you have gone, when you are going with, for example, railway line, you might have seen that number of houses are very narrowly to the railway line, they are arranged in a regular fashion, making almost a kind of line. So such type of pattern is referred to as the linear pattern. So again, linear pattern is so this type of pattern is referred to as the linear pattern. ठीक है? Then there is another pattern which is referred to as nebular pattern. So nebular pattern is characterized by high degree of compactness where round shape is natural exaggeration for the purpose of defense. The roads spirally move into the central location of the nucleus. In general, such settlements are small and develop around house of landlord or other cultural institution in hilly regions. Very commonly found in Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, Vindhyan Plains, Malwa Plateau, northeastern states like this. So see, this type of pattern would look something like this, that there is a cultural institution, suppose, in the center, and the roads spiral like this. Okay? Now there would be, if you are far away, very commonly what you will be finding, that there would be hamlets which would be present at a particular distance from each other. But as you near towards the center, you will find a more bigger more compact settlement would exist. So such type of pattern is a nebular pattern. Okay? So clearly you can understand this is the top of the hill, and near the top of the hill that cultural institution is located. Surrounding that cultural institution, this type of houses have developed. So this is nebular pattern. Then if you talk about circular pattern, circular to semicircular patterns develop around circular water bodies like salt lakes, lagoons, ponds, etc., which attract salt producers, fishermen, washermen, respectively. Thus, they are common in arid, semi-arid tracts of Rajasthan as well as in the coastal regions of Kerala. They can also be found in Indo-Gangetic plains along the Oxbow lakes, would be common. So, number of them can be found, like for example, if you talk about this type of settlement, so there is a water body here, and this is an example of a circular pattern. Also, there can be semicircular patterns, like for example, you take this, or so suppose there is a river, and this is one Oxbow lake which is present. So this is a Oxbow lake. So very commonly you can find settlements to be concentrated along this Oxbow lake. So there would be formation of a semicircular pattern. So that is one. Then there can be a star-shaped pattern. So star-shaped patterns are formed where many transportation lanes converge due to importance of a central place. So this central place can be rural market or any other socio-cultural institutions. Houses spread out along the sides of the roads in all directions. In India, such patterns have developed more recently and are primarily in the Great Plains of India, ranging from Punjab to Bihar. So again, so suppose there is in the center a presence of rural market and several transportation lanes are converging towards this rural market. So here this is a star-shaped pattern. Then there is another one which is fan or triangular pattern. So fan shape pattern, it is also triangular pattern it is referred to as. So here it would develop at convergence or junction of transportation arteries or even in the rivers where they are converging in the Doab regions. So further expansion of the settlement is constrained by presence of particular geographical features like river leading to such a pattern. So here there is this one river, there is this other river, and both are forming a other. So what can happen here? We can find that there can be development of such type of patterns. Such type of patterns are much more common in peninsular India, where the rivers are not frequently getting flooded. Okay. It can also be present in the areas where this is mainly road. So here what has happened, this is actually agricultural fields. This is also agricultural fields. So expansion of the settlement is not taking place in those fields because they are used for cultivation. People have made a compact settlement in this manner. This type of situation is more common in North India, related with the transportation routes. So this is another one. Then terraced pattern, it is a conspicuous hilly and mountainous regions, conspicuous in hilly and mountainous regions where hills are cut into terraces mainly for cultivation, found in Himalayan region and the southern hill complex. So if you talk about this kind of terraced pattern, very common type of pattern which would be formed where it would be formed in case of semi-compact settlements. So here so as you are going over the terraces, you will be finding that this type of houses at a particular distance almost would be found from each other. So there would be formation of semi-compact settlements. उसी का एक variant है horseshoe. Horseshoe, ये भी it is just a kind of ridge. And if you talk about horseshoe pattern, so these are also the lines of contour. These are the terraces which have been made. And here again what we will be finding that the So this is another form of pattern which develops. So what we are saying is simply there can be variety of shapes and patterns which the rural settlements can display depending upon what is the particular type of land use, depending upon how the roads are meeting, what is the actual situation of site. Like site, देख सकते हो, horseshoe pattern is developing where? More common in the peninsular region where such ridges are found. So it is function of the site, it is function of the man-made features which are there. Okay? So as a result of which we find that variety of shapes can be displayed by the rural settlements. Then we come to the next topic, that is morphology of the rural settlements. So morphology, पहले भी बताया, morphology mainly deals with what? Layout, plan and internal structure of the settlements, how they are formed. Essentially, इसमें लिखा नहीं, I think you use the word, it is study of the land use pattern. It is study of the land use pattern of a rural settlement. How essentially the land is being used, how the streets are formed, how the houses are built, what is the structure of the houses, with what material they are built. All these things we essentially study where? In the morphology of the rural settlements. So rural morphology not only views the settled areas in terms of physical space, but also identifies its various components with respect to socio-economic space. These components determine the arrangement of buildings, patterns of streets and fields, functional characteristics of the settlement. All of these are essentially studied as a part of the morphology of the rural settlement. In a country like India, which is very old, it assumes considerable significance as it helps in understanding the socio-cultural structure of the village, economic and sanitary conditions, as well as a response to innovations. अभी देखते हैं how changes in the morphology are there. You'll understand this point. Last point we talked about. So, study of rural settlements there are two main components of rural settlement. And one important component is the ground plan. Ground plan. Second important is the built up area. So अगर हम ground plan की बात करें, ground plan hardly changes. It is something which is very slowly ultimately changing. So which is study of the main buildings, street patterns and arrangement of the buildings, cultural artifacts, along with, यहाँ पर एक और लाइन लिख लो, along with the fields or agricultural fields, pasture lands, forests, etc. Second is the built-up area, which includes study of materials which have been used for construction of houses, farm states, roads. ठीक है? Built-up area is the main village site. It is the main village site. That is the built-up area. ठीक है? So what we are simply trying to say here is something like this. Suppose this is a road which is going. So here what has happened, the village has been built. So this is which type of pattern? It is a rectangular pattern, and here this is the main village site. A compact village has been formed like this, and this is your agricultural fields. These are the areas which are agricultural fields. Okay? So this is the built up area. Built up area. Okay? So what we will be finding, changes in the built up area will be fast, comparatively faster. But what would be the design? This whole macro feature is what? It is the design of the village. ठीक है? So ऐसा नहीं होगा कि यहाँ से बहुत सारे houses उठ करके यहाँ पे बनने लगे. This is not going to happen. Even if it happens, the change is what? It is very, very slow. ठीक है? So this plan, how the village has been formed, this plan is referred to as the ground plan. ठीक है? So this is what here we are talking about, built up area. So इसमें लिखा भी है, compared to the ground plan, the built up area responds more quickly to the socio-economic changes. So people, like for example, if you go in the villages today, you will be very commonly finding that people are now building houses which are more similar to the urban areas. Okay? So again, what is happening? The built up area changes fast. On the other hand, you will be finding the ground plan very slowly changes. Morphology of Indian villages की बात करें. So what has happened? Each of the Indian village will have its own morphology. But because there are some distinct characteristics of the society, the rural society in India, as a result of these distinct characteristics, what we will be finding, a specific type of morphology of the rural villages has evolved. ठीक है? अब इसमें एक दो चीजें you have to understand here. Built up area is further divided into three parts. One is the homogeneous part, or the ground plan can be divided into three parts. One is the homogeneous part, which refers to the agricultural fields, grazing होगा ये, grazing lands, community land which is owned. Then there is a circulatory part, and it primarily includes the khas गांव and the area of working class. अभी देखते हैं. Then there are special parts which are primarily include temples, schools, panchayat building, bus stands. Many of them can be there. So देखो होता क्या है? There is a kind of situation like this, that there is in the center the special part. This special part can be a well. This special part can be a temple. This special part can be some other important feature like lakes. This special part can be panchayat house. In modern times it can be other things like schools, whatever, but there would be a special part. And surrounding this special part, there would be location of houses which would be referred to as the khas gaon, the main village site. ठीक है? Surrounding this area, there would be presence of the working castes of India. And there would be outcasts. So this is a very general plan that we see in case of India, that If you talk about Indian villages are very much organized around the caste system. The idea of caste system. Now, very clearly you can understand Khas Gaon would be inhabited by whom? It would be the upper caste, rich people of the village. Surrounding this, these are the agricultural fields. Agricultural fields. ठीक है? So this is all these areas. ये खास गांव working caste, they make up what? They make up the circulatory part of the village. Special part is in the center, and these are the homogeneous parts, the agricultural fields surrounding them. So Indian villages are specifically built around the caste system. So over a period of time, socio-economic factors have led to development of peculiar morphology of in Indian villages. On an average, the ground plan of a typical Indian village can be divided into three parts. At the center of the village is the main village referred to as the Khas Gaon. This Khas Gaon is inhabited by upper caste community of the village, which includes Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas. The central part is well connected either with a non-metalled road or sometimes even with the metalled road. With the emergence of panchayats, you can understand that there is now more emergence of metalled roads, particularly that brick roads that they construct. They are very, very common in these areas. Very commonly, an important socio-cultural feature is found at the center of the Khas Gaon. This is the special part. This can be temple or even a well. So these are the people who have what? Control over this special institution. Okay? That is how they are surrounding them. Khas Gaon is surrounded by a second zone where houses of working population serving people of Khas Gaon is found. And this is what? This is the working caste. So several here working communities like goldsmiths, blacksmiths, carpenters, barbers and other village craftsmen and artisans are settled. This is well connected with the Khas Gaon through a network of rural roads and footpaths. So that is the case of the Khas Gaon. Outside this second zone lie small hamlets locally called by different names like Purva, Tola, Patti, Dhani, different names. It is inhabited by other working communities like Yadavs, fishermen, other outcasts would be very, very commonly found in these areas. Generally, such ground plan is common in most villages of India. When this general ground plan is translated onto physical landscape, that is the actual site, a variety of ground plans would emerge depending on the physical variability of the landscape. Okay? So this is basically what is the morphology of the Indian villages. Now, if we take one case study. So this is your Ganga river, and here is located this is a densely populated Ghazipur city. Ghazipur city. The village that we are talking about, there is a village by the name of, here in fact there is a railway station, and the name of the village is Tari Ghat. It is actually my village. So very famous in the area. Naam Tari isliye hai because there is a alcoholic drink which is made from khajur, Tari. So that is basically, it is very very famous for there. So this is a road which is going to एक छोटा सा स्टेशन है Zamania, and here this is to another place Bare. This is to Gorakhpur. This is towards to Ghazipur. Ghazipur, Varanasi. Now, here is the location of the village. So, there is a Shiv Mandir. Shiv Mandir, a temple is located here in the center, where around which you will be finding that the main Khas Gaon has been built. There are some subsidiary lanes which connect with the village site, or the main road, sorry. This is a neighborhood village by the name of Medinipur. Actually, it was the inhabitants. Abhi dekhte hain, I'll explain what has happened. So this is basically the Shiv Mandir, which is located here. Here there is a primary school. Primary school. Very near to this primary school is also presence of the primary health center. Primary health center is located. Here there is location of a post office. There is location of a post office. So this is the post office. Here just in front of the post office is a veterinary center. Veterinary centers which have risen. So this is your primary health center, this is the primary school, and here lies the Shiv Mandir. These are important cultural institutions which are located in the village site. And here we find that surrounding this there is houses which have been constructed, and hardly the roads are very very narrow and meandering. For example, when I go with my car, I will have to park the car here at this point. It cannot go inside. So this is mainly what? This site, if you talk about, is the Khas Gaon. This is the Khas Gaon. Now surrounding this Khas Gaon is this is another road which is there. Surrounding this Khas Gaon is the working caste. So working caste को दूसरे कलर से बनाता हूँ. So here lies the working caste communities. For example, here there is a pond is located. So it is like this, and here there is another road which separates this from this Medinipur village. Now, very importantly, what we find here, number of changes have taken place, or so this is the main. This we are talking about is the working caste zone. The working caste zone. Now, number of working caste can also be identified. Like for example, here the different names are given. Like some of them are particularly identifiable. Like for example, here this part, if we talk about, this part is specifically referred to as the Ahir Tola. The Yadavs, the milkmen of the village, they are inhabiting here in the Ahir Tola. This region is the Malla Tola. Malla Tola is the fishermen of the village which are located. So there are specific houses concentrated in with few of the communities which are there. So that is one arrangement which is found. Then there is other form of arrangement also. In some areas we find which is there is separated by a green belt. Okay? And here this is the green belt which is found. Away from this green belt, we find that near this railway station there is presence of the outcasts. So these are basically what? These are the outcasts, untouchables of the village, which are located here. So they have not been given place in the main village site. That is why they have to settle outside the village. Okay? Now what has happened, this was actually the village, the main plan. After independence, there has been very clear change in the main plan, and how this change has been brought about by now number of new cultural institutions have been formed. And now these are becoming this earlier CBD of the village. The main center of the village, it has today lost its significance. Ideally what happens in the special part, so many people always meet. There will always be presence of lots of people. It is the most functional part of the village. But today with the developmental activities, what has happened? Number of things have changed. For example, this railway station has become what? Today it has become the main special part of the village where there is maximum functionality to be found. Beside, there are other things which have also risen. Like for example, here there is formation of a bus station. Bus station. Here just beside the bus station there is another point which is the cooperative bank. Cooperative bank is located. So you can see one very important thing, number of new institutions have risen today. There is rise of number of new institutions which are becoming more functional than the earlier center, special part of the village. So now the special part is beginning to very clearly change. As the special part has begun to change, it has had impact on the others as well. So for example, what has happened now, all this, ये जो बचे हुए जो areas हैं, these are essentially what? This is agricultural fields. This is agricultural fields. ठीक है? Now what has happened? Here, because there was distribution in the land reforms, there was distribution of surplus land to number of landless laborers who were there in the village. And also with the emergence of this railway station, it is found that many of their actual fields were located in this area. So what has happened here now, there is emergence of, from a little bit away from this here, there is emergence of another village which is emerging here. Okay? And this is actually referred to as Malhor. It is Malhor. Mallhor. Malhor. So Malhor is basically what it was. It is a village which is formed of several lower caste landless laborers. Landless laborers. If you talk about Malhor, it doesn't has its political identity at this point of time. It is part and parcel of this same Tarighat village, which is also the Panchayat village. Okay, so it is part and parcel of this. What has happened? People from here have migrated here and formed this village. In fact, if you talk about this village, Medinipur, actually this was also formed in a same manner. And if you talk about this village, it is actually made up of the Yadav Ahir community. So this process started before, at the time of independence. This process of Malhor, it is more recent. That is why this village is less developed. On the other hand, this Medinipur has become quite old village and it is well developed now as a separate village from this Tarighat. Okay? So this is how the plan of the village is. इसमें भी लिखना है तो you can write this is to this railway station, railway line is to Dildar Nagar. Now number of other new features have also emerged, like for example, एक नया feature जो emerge हुआ है, at this point here, अक्सर होता है गांव में, that नीचे से शिवलिंग निकल आता है, ठीक है, तो यहाँ पर भी निकल आया, and there is a very famous Shiv temple. See, normally temples don't lose significance unless there is a bigger temple which is constructed. So this the special part which was earlier Shiv Mandir has mainly lost its significance because a new Shiv Mandir has emerged. And it is a very, very famous Shiv Mandir which is located, in fact, इसमें मेरे grandfathers ने भी एक संतोषी माँ का वो बनवाया है. And मतलब when I was born, उस समय बनाया गया था उसे. So that is here. And this has become the main temple of the village today. Okay? So it is a very good site, surrounded by fields, very, very cool. There is a well, you can go always very, even during the daytime, if you go, you'll not feel very hot. It is so much cool place because totally surrounded by trees. Okay. So this is the case of this Tarighat village. So it can be used as a case study. नहीं, अभी settlement नहीं है वहाँ पर. It is just a temple which is surrounded by field. In future maybe there would be growth of settlements. Right now there is no such settlement to be here. It is totally surrounded by fields. It is open fields. Okay, so if we talk about, this is the morphology of Indian village, a case study. Now there is one topic which is not there, उसको करते हैं. Factors and changes in the morphology of Indian villages. Morphology of Indian villages. So what we find that the morphology of Indian villages have been fast undergoing change. देख लो, morphology of Indian villages has been fast undergoing changes. Fast undergoing changes. It is result of, full stop, it is result of several factors. It is result of several factors. So factors देखते हैं और उनके impact की बात करते हैं. So number of factors we can very clearly see. One important factor, starting with the independence, has been the factor of land reforms. Land reforms. So what land reforms have done? Land reforms have led to the distribution of surplus land to landless laborers. And if you talk about with this distribution of surplus land, what has happened? New sites displaying, or sites means hamlets, have begun to emerge. Begin to emerge away from the main village. Away from the main village. So this is one common thing. अभी हमने मल्हौर का example दिया. That is a very good case of this situation. So that is one. Then second very important thing is the developmental activities. Of government. So as a result of developmental activities of the government, one very important thing which is seen is that the special parts of the village has, और ऐसे लिखो इसको, former special part of the village has lost its significance. And what has happened? New special parts have emerged. These can be, as we said, the panchayat house. This can be other things like the primary schools. This can be post offices are very common. This can be other situations like railway station or bus station, etc. In many cases, there are many cases of multiple nuclei, villages, which have more than one special part. जैसे जो मैंने अभी बनाया, यहाँ पर 2 special parts emerge हो चुके हैं. And these 2 special parts is this one, the bus station cooperative bank area, and the second one is this railway station. Always when you go here, both the places would have lots of people present. ठीक है, characterized by much higher functionality. So there are now 2 special parts. So there is emergence of what? Very frequently multiple nuclei. Villages have also emerged. So this is one type of change as a result of the developmental activities which has taken place. Also another type of change which has taken place as a result of developmental activities is the, if you talk about the structure of the roads, of transportation arteries. So what has happened? Now there is emergence of brick made roads. For example, if you go in North India, इसको हिंदी में वहाँ पर बोलते हैं खरंजा. This was not the earlier case. Earlier it used to be normal land. But now this brick made roads are emerging. Okay? So I still remember when I was small, when it used to rain, it was very difficult to go out. Why? Because फिसल जाओगे. It was simply land, bare land, and because of the water, because it is the alluvial land, so because of the water it was too much slippery. Now what has happened, because of the emergence of this brick made roads, it has become comparatively easier to walk even when it is raining. So structure of the transportation arteries have changed, although the plan has not changed. Plan of the transportation arteries remains same, because there is hardly any space which is left in the village where you can construct new roads. Okay? So, however, the plan has not much changed. So this is one type of change which has taken place. Then another type of change which has taken place is diffusion of urban cultures. Diffusion of the urban cultures has occurred. And this diffusion of the urban culture has brought fast changes in the built up area. Built up area. Much of this development is what? It is individualistic. So here what has happened, this fast change is mostly in what? In the house types. In the house types, this fast change has taken place, whereby the traditional houses have given way to modern houses made up of brick and cement. Okay? So where traditional houses made up of locally available मटीरियल, ठीक है। और यहाँ पर ट्रेडिशनल, यहाँ पर एक वर्ड ऐड कर सकते हो तो कर लो, सिंगल स्टोरी। Single story houses made up of locally available material have given way to modern multi-story houses made up of bricks and cement. Okay, so much of this change is actually what? It is individualistic change. As people get money, they improve their houses. And very commonly, as a result of which, one thing you'll be very commonly finding is that people have encroached even on more public land in building of their new houses. So what has happened actually, the roads have become even more narrower than they used to be in the past. The house has become, the village site has become what? It has become even more compact because of this type of situation. So this is one factor which is changing, and other forms of urban cultural influences can be very clearly seen in the habits of the people. But here we are concerned more about the morphology. So this is another change which has taken place. Then there are other changes which are also occurring. And one important factor which has led to this change is the declining significance of agriculture. Declining significance of agriculture. So what has happened? In recent times, agriculture has become less remunerative. Has become less remunerative. So what we find that as a result of this, people of the Khas Gaon, what they are doing, they have begun to out-migrate. Towards cities. So what they have done, they have given their land on the rent system which is prevalent, and now they are just living in the cities. They are coming back, collecting rent and again going back. So because of this, what has happened, it is very common to find, it has become common to find ghost houses. Ghost houses where in the Khas Gaon, houses which are lying totally empty. Okay? So this is another form of change which is taking place as a result of the modern situations which are emerging. So these are the main changes which have been introduced in the village, if you talk about site. So for example, here there is our house and we have just kept one caretaker who is living there with his family. Otherwise this house would have been also empty. And इधर पीछे जाएं तो ये वाला हाउस, इट इज अ घोस्ट हाउस, nobody lives here. There is another, in fact, if you go here, this is also is a ghost house. So what has happened, people have out migrated from the village, and because it is not, cities are more attractive to the people, even from financial point of view. They're doing better in the cities. So that is basically the case of the morphology of the Indian villages. आगे बढ़ते हैं. अब एक क्वेश्चन पहले पूछा गया है एग्जाम में, फैक्टर्स अफेक्टिंग रूरल हाउस टाइप्स इन इंडिया. रूरल हाउस टाइप कहीं पर भी सेपरेटली मेंशन नहीं है सिलेबस में, बट दे हैव आस्क्ड सेपरेटली अबाउट रूरल हाउस टाइप. सो अगेन it is to be expected because morphology includes, study of morphology includes also the house types study. ठीक है. So that is what we are going to talk about. जब हम house की बात करते हैं, rural house, you can understand that the rural house houses will be describing in terms of number of features. Like one common feature in India we देखते हैं that we'll be finding is the presence of courtyard, open space in the house. आंगन जिसे हम बोलते हैं. We'll talk about the floor plan, whether it is rectangular, circular. We'll talk about the roof type. ठीक है. So roof type, here it is, floor plan is either rectangular or circular. If you talk about the roof type, it can be many, like it can be conical roofs, it can be presence of sloping roofs, there can be presence of flat roofs. Others like the building material used, others like the structure of house, like they can be single story houses or they can be multi-story houses. So when you have to describe the house type, you will describe the house type along these lines. ठीक है. So एक एक करके बात करते हैं. Number of factors are affecting the rural house types in India. One important factor is the factor of climatic conditions. And climatic conditions, how important they are, you can understand that there is presence of the concept of courtyard is almost universal in India. ठीक है. So it is almost what? Universal in India. So एक एक करके बात करते हैं. सबसे पहले है climate. And climate में भी I can take up different factors, like I can include temperature. So India is basically what? India is a tropical humid country. Presence of Himalayas, they are like a wall, and these walls, what they do, they make even the northern India much more like what? Much more like tropical humid, although it is subtropical in nature. ठीक है. So latitude wise northern India is subtropical. But what happens? Presence of the Himalayas doesn't allow temperatures to drop very low. So it is tropical humid, and as a result of which there is a concept of courtyard which is almost universal. And how the houses are built? The doors and windows of the rooms, they open towards courtyard. So why they are opening towards courtyard? So that there can be effective circulation of air and the rooms can remain cool. In order to ensure effective circulation of air, so that the rooms can remain cool. Because of this characteristic, tropical humid characteristic of India, what we find, actually the courtyard is the main living space. It is the main living space. So majority of the time people are, the inhabitants of the house are sitting where? In the courtyard, not inside the rooms. Because generally the rooms would tend to become hot. So they would spend most of their time in the courtyard. Rooms are mainly utilized in some seasons, like for example in the northern India in the winters, they can be used. Main task of these rooms is what? These rooms are used as mostly for storage purposes. Okay? So again, that is the case of temperature. If you include temperature, there is one place, however, where the courtyard is missing, and this is the temperate India, which is essentially Himalayas. So here, because of severe winters, what we find, that there is absence of courtyard. Although here also outer courtyard can be found. So influence of temperature you can understand. Then influence of precipitation. Precipitation influence. So precipitation has strong influence on the roof types. For example, if you go in the parts of India where there is, we are talking about the northern plains. So in northern plains there is this 200 centimeter iso height. There is presence of this 100 centimeter iso height which is there, and there is presence of 25 centimeter iso height. So what is the roof type which we'll be finding here? There would be presence of conical roofs, because there is very heavy precipitation. Here in between this area there would be presence of sloping roofs. Here in fact यहाँ पर 50 centimeter भी कर लो. Here there is more mixed types which would be found. Here there is presence of more flat roofs. And here again the roofs would become sloping. In the desert area the sloping roofs would be found so that the sand cannot accumulate over the roof. Thus it tend to become sloping. You can very clearly understand in the Himalayas, again it would be sloping, so that the snow cannot accumulate. Okay? So precipitation is another very, very dominant factor which influences the house types in India. So that is one एक एक करके I'll just talk about. Like for example, one factor is the shelter factor, and इसमें shelter factor में you take the case of building material. So what is happening? It is the presence of locally available building material which determines the house characteristics. Like for example, if you go in the Himalayas, houses made up of stones. Stones made houses are common, or rock made houses. Rock made houses are common. If you go in the Indo-Gangetic plains, houses made up of mud and agricultural residue. Agricultural residue are very commonly seen. Here, mud made houses very commonly. In fact, you might have seen that which is referred to as khapral. Khapral is basically what? It is a mud which has been baked. Okay? So again, it is what? Mud made houses are very common. As you go in the eastern and northeastern India, you'll be finding that bamboo made houses tend to become common. So another very important factor is the case of the building material, which affects the type of rural houses. Other factors can be there, like for example the factor of hazards and disasters. Like for example, very good example of this is Assam plain. In Assam plain, a special type of house is referred to as the Machan type. Machan type of houses are very common. So in Machan type of houses, there would be long leg of the houses. House would be built a bit above, like a Machan, mainly because this area is very frequently flooded. This is the result of the frequent flooding which is taking place. Okay? So again, this is a very common type of tendency which is found. So this is one factor. Then you can understand the economic characteristics. So you can understand the economic status is in India, can I say generally poor? It is generally poor. As a result of which you will be finding the majority of the houses would be what? These would be single dwellings. Single room dwellings. Single room dwellings would be very common, which would be surrounded by courtyard. It would be more common. And these single room dwellings would also be single story houses made up of locally available material. It is again function of what? It is again function of the economic status of the people, which is generally poor. In recent times, as the economic status has changed, what has happened with the nature of the houses? They are becoming more urban type. As it has changed in recent times. So houses are now being becoming multi-story, made up of brick and cement and more urban type. ठीक है. So the economic characteristics is playing what? It is playing a very, very important role. Occupation, economic characteristic का एक subset है occupation. So in India is essentially what? Agricultural country where cropping is very important activity. Beside the livestock is also important. So most of the rural houses must have what? Separate space for storing agricultural produce as well as the livestock. Okay, so this is another common feature you'll be finding. There would be special space which would be kept for livestock, for example. Okay, cow sheds or goat sheds, all this type of things would be present, and mostly it would be the outer courtyard. A part of the outer courtyard would be reserved for such a situation. There are several other factors like the socio-cultural factors. So socio-cultural factors की बात करें, like system of patriarchy, like the system associated with that is the Ghungat system. Where this system, Ghungat system, is more pronounced? Can I say northern India? Northern India. So here it is very, very common thing that there would be two courtyards. One is the inner and other is the outer courtyard. So inner courtyard is essentially living space for women. Space for women. While if you talk about outer courtyard is for men, it is meant for men. So it is very common to find this type of structure of the houses. So here there is an inner courtyard. Inner courtyard being surrounded by the rooms and there would be outer courtyard. Many shapes outer courtyard can be present. Like it can be simply surrounding it like this, or like one I have made, variety of shapes can be displayed. But very common to find the presence of inner and outer courtyard. Even in poor, not very rich people, you can find that there would be small inner courtyard which would be present. Okay? So that is again result of what? The socio-economic factors. They are responsible for making of the houses like this. Then other like technological improvements. Technological improvements. So today it is changing as a result of technological change. Number of things are changing. For example, today in the past, what was happening? In the past, courtyard used to be the main living space. But in modern times, number of factors have changed. Like for example, presence of electricity, presence of other equipments like fans, coolers, even now air conditions are making their way into the villages. Others like for example emergence of television. All these have changed the characteristic of the houses now. And now rooms are becoming the main, we are using the word becoming. That means it is changing now. Main living space. Main living space. Also the factor of technology has led to change in the structure of the houses from single story to they becoming multi-story. Okay? All these type of features would be found. You can understand earlier the outer courtyard was mainly to keep the livestock. Now people are slowly leaving agriculture. So now it is used to keep vehicles. ठीक है, livestock की जगह पर अब bikes etc. they are replacing them. So number of type of changes have very clearly occurred in the structure of the houses. So this is basically the case of rural India. Then another topic, environmental issues in rural settlements. Without looking into the material, तुरंत उसको बंद कर देते हैं and we'll just brainstorm what would be the environmental issues in the rural settlements in India. I'll give you 2 minutes. Think. Okay, the main problem that would emerge is that as soon as we think of environmental issues in rural settlement, our mind would simply go towards human created environmental issues. Can I say rural settlements are also facing several environmental issues which are more natural? Like for example, one type of environmental issues can be related with natural hazards and disasters. Natural hazards and disasters. You tell me which are the most common type of natural hazards and disasters found in India? One very common is the phenomena of flooding. Very frequently this happens, and flooding when it is taking place, although it would renew the soil, but flooding can also lead to lots of soil erosion. Okay? It can lead to lots of soil erosion problems. Others like the case of drought. This is making increasingly threatening the phenomena of desertification. Other problems can be there, like for example, there can be situations of forest fires, very commonly found. There can be other environmental issues that they can face, like for example, the problem of landslides. It is mostly in the mountainous and hilly regions of India. Okay? So again, this is another issue which is related with them. For example, if you talk about the problems of cyclones in the coastal villages, dust storms, several type of problems. So these are the important natural hazards related problems. Other type of environmental issues they face, like for example, contamination of water bodies. Contamination of water bodies. You can understand these can be more natural, like for example, groundwater contamination. So groundwater contamination can be related with natural features like presence of very commonly arsenic in the groundwater. It is result of what? It is result of chemical weathering. Okay, very dominant in the northern Indian plains. So that is one of the issues related with the water bodies. There can be other issues related with the water bodies, like for example, in recent times India में देखोगे तो there is the problem of water hyacinth, जिसे हम बोलते हैं जलकुंभी. So that water hyacinth is basically what? It is a weed which has now encroached upon majority of these type of local water bodies located in India, villages. Okay? Because of that, what happens? It is leading to a situation that these are becoming mostly dead zones. Okay? Dead zones in the sense that there would be less fishes, etc., which would be found there in these areas. They cannot be too much productively utilized, these water bodies. And water hyacinth, it was basically what? It is a exotic vegetation plant which was brought into India as a decorative plant. And ultimately it was so much powerful in spreading that it has become a menace today. Okay? So contamination of these water bodies, it is another important factor which is there. Other factors are also there, like groundwater की बात कर रहे थे तो there is also problem of lowering of the groundwater. Like for example, lowering of the groundwater is result of mostly what? It is result of mostly, I am using the word mostly, human activities. Human activities have led to reduction in the groundwater in many ways. Like for example, one is the tube well irrigation. हमने देखा है उसको पहले भी, which is the most important cause. But other causes also, like for example, social forestry programs based on eucalyptus. So eucalyptus tree is doing what? It is a very powerful extractor of resources. So what it does, wherever you plant many eucalyptus trees, what they would do? They would lower the groundwater table. Okay? So that is the contamination of the water bodies related problem. Also you can understand other problems like the problem of eutrophication of the water bodies. So eutrophication of the water bodies, it is essentially associated with what? Agricultural activities. As more and more nutrients have entered these water bodies, being washed away from the agricultural fields, like the fertilizers being washed away, going with runoff into these areas, what will happen? Under eutrophication, the density of the living beings increase. As a result of which, what will happen? It would become so high that the BOD, the biological oxygen demand, it would become very high. And the total availability of oxygen would become lower. As a result of which, these water bodies would essentially become the dead zones. Okay? So several types of such problems are associated with the contamination of water bodies. So this is another issue which the rural areas face. Then other issue is related with agriculture. agriculture related environmental issues. Now agriculture is the way we are practicing agriculture, it has become less environment friendly. And that is again what? That is again a problem for the rural areas. Like for example, अभी हमने कुछ problems देखे agriculture के, like agriculture, does it has impact on the water bodies? Very clearly it is having a bad impact on the water bodies. But not only water bodies, it impacts land and soil. Like for example, agricultural activities can lead to greater erosion. Greater erosion. Like for example, this is result of what? It is result of many faulty agricultural practices. Faulty agricultural practices. Like for example, one very common thing you will be finding in more humid areas, what the farmers would do, if the regional slope is in this direction, farmers would plow their field in the same direction. Why it is being done? It is being done to ensure that the extra water drains off. The field is not waterlogged. Okay? But what will be the problem that would arise? It would lead to soil erosion. It would become the cause of soil erosion. Okay? Others, like for example, you take the case of areas where there is practice of terraced farming. Now in these areas, although precipitation might be higher, actual availability of water would be lower because the slopes are steeper. So majority of water would simply drain off. It would go as runoff. So very frequently what the farmers would do, they would create artificial embankments here. Like this. Why they are making these artificial embankments? So that the water retains. Water can be stored here. But the problem is, if the water is storing here, this water would infiltrate down. And as the water infiltrate down, we'll see that in landslide, in mass wasting activity, water plays a very important role. This water would do what? It would increase the weight of the rocks. It would also behave as a lubricating agent. And because of both of these, what will happen? There would be greater chances of landslides taking place. Okay? So, various ways what we are doing, we are affecting the land. Like और भी example लेना है तो, in areas like Bihar, particularly areas like Jharkhand, part of the Bihar, it was seen that very frequently farmers what they did to ensure that there is less erosion and more importantly to ensure that the wild animals, like for example Nilgai is a very common type of animal, they cannot enter the agriculture field. What they would do, they would dig trenches around the agricultural fields. What was seen very frequently, these trenches become nuclei for future gullying and ravining. Future gullying and ravining, they become nuclei for it. Okay? So number of issues are related, land related issues are related with agriculture. Then others like atmospheric pollution. Atmospheric pollution can be there. Like for example, if you talk about burning of agricultural residue, which is a very, very common menace. Residue. Others, like for example, they are agricultural fields are important source of greenhouse gases like methane. Majority of the methane concentration that we find today, it is a result of the paddy fields and the wetlands which are present. Also the livestock. Okay. So agricultural activities are doing what? They are having bad impact on the atmosphere as well. Also, if you talk about the biota, can I say the type of agriculture which is practiced today, like the case of green revolution. Green revolution. It does what? It has a bad impact on the agriculture or environment, as it promotes monoculture tendencies. Monoculture tendencies are being promoted by it. Also, you can understand other problems which are there, like the phenomena of biomagnification. Biomagnification. So, you know about the food chain. So, if you are using harmful chemicals here, these chemicals will not break down and they would go from one part of the food chain to the other. So, this is referred to as the problem of biomagnification. So, it is a very, very common problem related with the agricultural activities. Similarly, other forms of problems like the problems of overgrazing, and what they are leading to, they are leading to degradation of pasture lands. Pasture land. Okay? Increasing intensity of agriculture is affecting the quality of the soil as well. So several ways what we find agriculture has an effect on the environment. Okay? So these are one type of issues related with the rural areas. Then there are other type of issues related with the rural areas, and this type of issue is more related with the socio-cultural practices. ठीक है, और भी चीजें बायोटा में लिख सकते थे, like you could have written about the झूम cultivation. Okay. Socio-cultural practices की बात करें तो socio-cultural practices can be many type of social-cultural practices. They are having bad impact on the environment. ठीक है, like for example, one is the frequent problem of open defecation. When the population was lower, it was not so much of a problem. But now what has happened, population has increased. Thus the open defecation would become a very, very severe problem. And it is leading to lots of, you can say, pollution in these areas. Others problems can be there, like for example, cultural practices, like immersion of idols in water bodies, etc. So variety of the socio-cultural practices, they are also causing harm to the environment. They are also becoming problem. As people become more capable, as their numbers also increase, these are becoming more and more bigger problems. ठीक है? So earlier it was like कि suppose अगर immersion, idle immersion करना है, तो जो सबसे अमीर लोग होते थे विलेज के, they only had the rights of doing so. But as more freedom has emerged, as more economic capabilities have emerged, now all of them want to do so. You can see even in the cities this is a very, very important issue. So again, that is one thing. Then other issue is related with the spillover effects of pollution from cities. Spillover effects of pollution from the cities. So you can understand that cities are causing lots of pollution because they are interconnected to each other. What will happen? This would also go to the villages. Like take the case of Kanpur, has lots of leather tanneries, and these leather tanneries lots of harmful chemical pollutants. They would enter river Ganga. So what will happen to the downstream villages located on the river? Will they be adversely affected? They will definitely be facing the environmental problems. Okay? So the spillover effects from the cities is another factor which is causing the environmental issues. So ये सब जो चीजें बोली है, majority of these are written here. नहीं, written नहीं है, it is I think short में लिखा हुआ है. So remedial measures बाद में देखते हैं, और already हमने देखा है IRDP, Integrated Rural Development Program. We have to, इसमें remedial measures में क्या होगा? जो problems हैं उन्हीं को manage करने के लिए हमें तरीके निकालने पड़ेंगे. Like for example, हमने एक problem देखा, it was related with the natural hazards. So what you will have to do, you will have to find out ways to deal with natural hazards. Like for example, you cannot control natural hazards. सबसे पहली बात तो हमें यही समझना होगा. What we can do, we can bring behavioral changes. We can bring those changes which are causing more of these natural hazards to occur. Like for example, one of the very important cause is the deforestation. The problem of removing the vegetation. This is one of the big factors which has led to more flooding and more droughts in recent times. So what you have to do, you will have to practice more social forestry. You have to increase the tree cover. Okay? So you have to deal with the natural hazards, like other things like use of the floodplain zoning, okay? Implementation of the zoning laws. All these would be very important. Like for example, हमने बात किया cyclones की. और भी हैं issues like coastal areas में the coastal erosion is an issue. ठीक है? So there you'll have to implement the coastal regulation zone laws properly. What is happening? Many of the fragile areas we are doing developmental activities, due to which there is more degradation taking place, faster degradation taking place. So what we have to do, we have to protect those sites. You don't have to destroy the mangroves, you don't have to destroy the coral reefs. That is the way you will be essentially protecting. Similarly, water related issues में प्रधान मंत्री कृषि सिंचाई योजना is the solution for the water related issues. If you talk about agriculture, it is the sustainable agriculture, इसके बारे में हमने बात किया, practices which are going to be the key. Socio-cultural practices, lots of campaigns, awareness, education of the people, that is going to change these practices. Spillover effects from the cities, again we'll have to bring the city technology to be more environment friendly. Okay? That is the solutions which are